Sorry, that wasn't meant to be.
That's fine. I've never had a fashion designer as a guest, but I've not had a dog either. Hello and welcome to episode 132 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing and the F is for, well, you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm no rockstar, but I've picked up a thing or two over the last 20 years on my tour from sysadmin to CMO, and each week I chat to the true rockstars, my fabulous guests and chums, and share with you some marketing street knowledge that hopefully will inspire your inner rockstar. Come say hello. We are Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we are proud members of the Marketing Podcast Network. This episode is recorded on Friday the 16th of September 2022. Hope you've had a good week and you are well, safe and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. On this week's episode, in the marketing studio, Jeff Clark and I wonder if RevOps is a one-hit wonder or Wonderwall. I go backstage with fashion designer turned B2B marketer Galina Sobolev, and in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar, Robert Rose shares some thoughts from this week's content marketing year. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word.
We'll be right back.
After this word.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe.
On to our first segment, the Marketing Studio with Jeff Clark. If you're new to the show, Jeff is our resident Rockstar CMO advisor and former Forrester Serious Decisions Research Director. Welcome back, Jeff, to Rockstar CMO in the Jeff Clark studio. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
You've been planning that.
I gotta plug my guitar in sometimes, so I can just do a little diddly. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. You should have brought your guitar out. For regular listeners might remember that Jeff can play the guitar and has done on this very show.
I have been in a rock band, although I can't claim to be a rock star.
Well, none of us claim to be a rock star. We just have this weird name for our show. So there we go. This week we're going to be talking about revenue ops, my friend. Obviously we'll talk about the weather in a second, but we're going to talk about revenue ops. How's the weather?
How's the weather? That was a question.
Yes, of course.
It's an absolutely beautiful day, and as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm going to go out for a cycle on a bicycle, a pedal bike, and it's just a beautiful, sunny, cool day here in New England.
we're having the same beautiful, sunny September evening. Although I'm wondering whether we should, this is ruining the evergreen nature of our content by referring to the weather. So if somebody's listening to this and it's pissing with rain outside, we do apologise.
Yes. It will get better if it is.
All right. So with this week, we're going to talk about revenue ops. And I thought we'd resurrect something that maybe the regular listeners will remember, that we used to do one hit wonder or Wonderwall, where we took a topic or a fad that had been brought to our attention and we gave it the one hit wonder or Wonderwall treatment, in which we decide whether it's a one hit wonder or Wonderwall. I wonder if in a sentence I could say one hit wonder or Wonderwall any more often.
Probably not.
So revenue ops, over the past few years, it's become quite hypey, hasn't it? We've seen it in blogs, webinars, and all sorts of places. And I think you reminded me that when we had now Forrester analyst or senior analyst or principal analyst Simon Daniels on the show, when he was merely one of us mortals, he referred to revenue ops when we were talking about marketing ops, which was an interesting discussion. So we've dipped our toe into the topic. So, Jeff, is revenue ops a one-hit wonder or Wonderwall?
Well, first we should define what the heck we're talking about here, because
Yes.
I think it's the terminology that becomes the issue. So it's like revenue ops is ostensibly merging sales and marketing operations, and if you do have what did it say, if you have product operations or some other groups, merge them together into a cohesive, collaborative, operational unit. And so, I think that's one of these things that in theory sounds like, wow, why wouldn't we want to do that?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking, because it does sound like a wonder wall. I mean, you've got this new title rising up, and as the conversation about the CMO being moved, and we're talking about Chief Revenue Officer, and we're having revenue ops, and it's a lovely big old love-in between sales and marketing. But why is this a different? Why revenue ops? Why do you think we should be looking at this thing?
Well, so I mean, I think the thing is that from a marketing perspective, and so this really as when this popped out, and I was in the marketing ops group back at Forrester. It's like we always want to be associated with revenue. That's kind of like the holy grail. So we have revenue. Revenue engines and revenue technology and revenue funnels and blah 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 blah. And so anything we can do to put a revenue spin on something makes us look like we're being more relevant. But I think one of the challenges is that it's like when you say the term revenue operations, it means you're implying an organizational structure. I mean, not just a love fest, in which lots of people can be invited. You're implying a structure, and I think what's wrong with it is it's kind of become a fad, like account-based marketing, where you'd say, well, I get it, but isn't that what we've been trying to do all along?
You've galloped ahead. You've galloped ahead a little bit there, Jeff, to start talking about what's wrong with it. But if we focus on the why, because when I talk about what marketing is for, right, I talk about awareness, revenue, and trust, right? Because I talk about creating art. So revenue is definitely, and you're saying marketers want to be associated with revenue, so all positive, right? And we encourage marketers to associate themselves with metrics that the C-suite cares about.
Absolutely.
Revenue. So that's all good. So, and then this seems to be a sense of, well, how do we operationalize that together, right? So what's wrong with RevOps? I know you've already started on that.
Yes, sorry for jumping ahead. So what's wrong? Again, it's implying an organizational structure. So and so in some cases, there certainly are sectors, industry sectors where the chief person in charge of revenue is the person who's in charge of sales. They're in charge of marketing. They may be in charge of some other functions like services. So like in manufacturing, distribution, logistics, a lot of engineering led technologies, et cetera, that is the case. But if I'm in what I would say is probably a more traditional, business to business marketing role, certainly the companies I was at, where you had a head of marketing, a CMO, and you had a head of sales who could be a CRO or, whatever, senior vice president of sales. And so if I'm going to create again, it's implied that I've created this unified operational team. Well, where does it report? Yeah. Because who it reports to determines who's going to set the priorities and the goals, and reporting lines really do matter. And so I think that becomes the issue, is that there's, if we treat revenue ops like a lot of these other trends, like account-based marketing, and say, wow, everybody should be going towards this, thinking about it, blah, 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 then it's like, well, we got to be much clearer about what we're meaning here. Because if there's a very small, maybe 10% of the market that is, or 10% of the organizations out there for which this as an organizational principle is a good fit, then what about the rest of the 90%? Right. And certainly you don't want to be the CMO and then everyone you're going to for information about data and technology and the processes sits under the head of sales, and vice versa.
Yes. Oh, I see what you're saying. So where we currently will have sales ops sitting under sales, marketing ops sitting under marketing, and then hopefully those two teams working well together. You're saying that if we then squish those together, come up with a revenue operations team and put them either under the CMO or under the head of sales, somebody's not going to get served.
Someone's going to feel slighted.
Yeah.
And in theory, and I mean, we've been through lots of reorganization, stuff like that. And it's in theory, it's like if you move product marketing out from under the CMO and you put it in the product group, the CMO will say, well, we'll make it work. But then it requires the executives to be in lockstep on probably even on minutia that you don't want them necessarily to be in lockstep on. And so I think that's really the challenge.
So what's I'm wondering what part of this isn't marketing operations in a way, right? Because if you think about marketing operations, we're tracking pipeline, right? We're tracking the lead generation. We're typically involved with the CRM in that way and sort of in some way best practices, but then you'll have sales operations helping out with that. The lion's share of what the C-suite's going to need, what the CEO is going to need, or even the head of sales, whatever it's going to need, is going to come out of marketing operations if we view it in that traditional way, right?
Or it could come out of sales operations. I mean,
it
could be the sales, and this gets into the culture of the company. Is it a marketing or is it a sales-driven organization?
Right.
And and if it's a sales-driven organization, they're going to be the ones that are taking the charge. But I mean, the reality is that a lot of the issues, data processes, the lead process is a handoff to the opportunity process, and all of these things do need to be looked at in a unified way. So that's one of the things. And I know when we were talking about this at Forrester, as much as we in marketing ops kind of bristled at the language, it's like. But the holy grail really is to make sure that marketing operations and sales operations are in lockstep and thinking about things and planning things together. And again, you've got to serve different masters. So you need to make sure that the CMO and the head of sales are aligned as well as the operations staff aligned. But if you're if you're working on we're like the CRM, we're gonna buy a new CRM system. It's like, well, marketing and sales ops should be, maybe not equal stakeholders, but pretty darn close to equal stakeholders because they're going to be feeding different parts and using different parts of that system together.
Well, I mean, isn't that also about which is going to be the single source of truth, right, for your customers, right? And if it's going to be the CRM, then there's equal stakeholders across the business, isn't there?
Yeah, and if you're going to get like a customer data platform that feeds or is getting information from the CRM and other tools like a data warehouse in your organization, then it's like you need to be planning how you're going to use that together. And as much as my experience of early, building lead flows that map into opportunity flows. I mean, we thought about it as marketing does this part and sales does that part. But that's the other thing that is, needs to be more aligned because sales and marketing are both working early parts of a life cycle of a customer. Exactly. And sales and marketing are probably working both parts at the later end. Yeah, even though there's some nuances.
Yeah, there's no handover anymore, is there? Because the customer journey in B2B, as has been well documented, is kind of squiggly, isn't it? I mean, they'll go forward a couple of steps, back a couple of steps.
Very squiggly.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it makes an argument, I guess, for having one team and across the piece. But isn't this really about having coherent systems and then being able to do the appropriate reporting depending on the context of that particular customer?
And a couple examples. I mean, when I was at Pegasystems and I ran marketing operations, I mean, I worked hand in hand with the people in sales ops, and it was a really good relationship that was both good at the executive level and it was good at my level. And so, I mean, we were building new lead flows. We were kind of using our be building the capability to use our own CRM system.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff that we had to work on together. And I had people who had talent in data and good relationships with the guys that ran the data warehouse. And, they had good people too. So a lot of it was, putting the good people in place and then making sure that they work together.
Yeah. We had the same at SendShares. We were trying to bring together HubSpot and Salesforce, right?
Yep.
Now, if you take that sort of siloed view, it'd be like, oh, Salesforce is sales and HubSpot is marketing, but we're trying to integrate those two things together. And the two guys, one of the sales ops guys and one of my guys, would sit next to each other trying to figure this thing out of how it was going to integrate together. And it just so happened the person in marketing actually was quite proficient at the Salesforce stuff. So there was no real distinction between where those skills were. The sales ops guy knew what he wanted to get out of it, and the marketer knew how to get the reports that he was looking for. So
great example.
It was, it was very collaborative. So
before you jump on another example, which is kind of counter to what we've been talking about, is that there was a company that, again, when I was at Forrester, we were advisor to, so I won't mention their name, but they kind of had a collapse in marketing and a very sales driven organization, and so the people that were kind of in the operational roles of marketing moved in under a revenue, they called it revenue operations team. Which reported up into sales, and they had a ton of issues of replacing their CRM, fixing their lead and opportunity processes. So they had to go through the whole gamut of challenges on technology, process, skills, etc. And it was actually a positive that they, and also measure. This is like, how are we measuring success? Determining what they're going to measure, the tools they're going to use. And that was a success because again, there wasn't, I think in this case, there were not two equally powerful executives and teams, marketing and sales. So one basically took control, took the effort, created the revenue ops team. The challenge, was, and, would be down the road, is that as you build up your marketing capabilities again, then does the head of marketing, do they feel like they have people that they can go to and get the things that they need in terms of reporting and upgrading technology, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, it could become like part of that tug of war between sales and marketing, isn't it? And in terms of who owns what in the wrong kind of organization, in that kind of dysfunctional organization. Yeah, whereas we're saying that. So I'm getting the sense that what we're saying about this, and you mentioned account-based marketing a moment ago, and when we talked about account-based marketing, whenever that was, quite a few shows ago, I think we decided that it was just a thing that was good to do and that it was actually marketing. It didn't need to be called account-based marketing. If you're in B2B and you're not doing account-based marketing, then you're not really marketing, kind of thing, wasn't it? It's just a really good best practice. So I think we're driving towards that same place, aren't we?
I think we're driving exactly that same place. Is that as opposed to thinking of something that's new, it is best practice to say, how do the operations teams, and again, we could be thinking about services and other organizations or the functions that have operations team members, and saying, how do we make sure they're aligned on their vision, the goals, and when it comes to all the things that cross, because processes, technology, the use of data, the ability to get data for analysis, the measurement, all of those things typically are cross these functions, and so doing it in a in a more aligned way in terms of how you're planning for it and how you're executing it it's just best practice, and everybody should be doing it.
Absolutely. And I'm trying to recall some of the conversations I've had with CMOs in interview slots, and I think it was Ed Brielt, the CMO of Aprimo, was talking about how, I think it was him, where they were making this kind of thing work because of the relationship between the head of sales and the CMO. And so it sounds to me like you don't need to have a CRO to make this work, but it sounds like if you do have a CRO, you would probably call that group RevOps because we all work for the CRO, right? So this assumes that there's an organization where it all sits under one guy or gal, sorry. And so if you have a revenue department under a chief revenue officer, then revenue operations is the right thing to call.
Yep.
To call your sales and marketing operations. But if you don't, like most businesses, then the revenue operations discipline is in the hands of marketing ops and sales ops to work better together.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Fantastic. But so that leaves us with the final question really on that, which is it, do we think, a one-hit wonder or Wonderwall?
I think it's a one-hit wonder.
Splendid. Splendid. I'm sure that's going to be quite controversial, actually, because
but also because
so
all the songs I was thinking about were one-hit wonders. So it has to be.
So let's move on to that then. So you've picked a one-hit wonder for this week, Jeff. What are you going with?
I picked from the Flock of Seagulls in 1982, which, for those of you who don't remember, was actually a name of a band. They had a song called I Ran. And, as most of these songs, it has more of a romantic theme. But, it's like when I think of a lot of the buzzwords out there, I mean, my inclination is to run away. So that's why I picked it.
So Revenue Ops is a one-hit wonder, and I'll be playing out with I Ran by Flock of Seagulls from 1982.
Oh, yes. Way back when. Hey, that was 40 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. And then to close, will I be joining you in the Jeff
in the studio
next week? Cool.
I'll plug my
and I
guitar
believe that
next
we
year.
know what we're going to be talking about. So shall we reveal that to the listener?
Sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to be, because we mentioned it earlier, you mentioned it anyway, that we're going to talk about customer data platforms.
Yes.
Inspired by our chum.
Yeah. And I don't think this is I'm not sure this is a one-hit wonder or Wonderwall. This is a...
Oh,
well,
no,
actually, we'll have to figure that one out.
Yeah, no, I don't. We could argue about that right now. I wouldn't say it's a one-hit wonder, but I don't think it's one-hit wonder, Wonderwall. We're just going to share with our listeners our views on customer data platforms next week, inspired by Mr. Daniels that we referred to earlier on.
Yes.
Forrester. All right, mate. Well, as I mentioned, I'll play out with a Flock of Seagulls, and I'll see you next week.
I walk along the avenue. I never thought I'd meet a girl like you. Meet a girl like you. With auburn hair and tawny eyes. The kind of eyes that hypnotize me through. You hypnotize me through. And I ran so far away.
Thank you, Jeff. And that was I Ran from the Flock of Seagulls from 1982. There might be some that might argue they had more than one hit. What do you think? Are you a fan of the Flock of Seagulls or maybe Revenue Ops? Let us know. We are Rockstar CMO on all the socials. Time to go backstage with my guest. Galina Sobolev is the CMO of StyleScan and founder, creative director at Single Los Angeles. As you'll hear, Galina grew up in Ukraine. She learned to sew and crochet from her grandmother, developing a deep love of fashion, and she studied at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. She pursued a career in high-end fashion, creating her own label, Single Los Angeles, a luxury collection for independent, stylish and passionate women, and she was also a fashion designer finalist on Bravo's Launch My Line. Seeing that the fashion industry was on the precipice of change, Galina recognised a new opportunity at the intersection of fashion and technology and joined StyleScan as CMO, seeking innovative ways for fashion brands to become more inclusive, sustainable and consumer-centric. I might be the last person who should be interviewing a fashion designer. Let's see how I got on. Welcome, Galina, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And for people that haven't come across you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Galina Sobolev, and I am a fashion designer who grew up in Odessa, Ukraine, immigrated to New York, studied in New York, studied fashion design at Fashion Institute of Technology, BFA graduate, did an exchange program in UK at Nottingham in a knitwear technology specialization. Moved back to UK, lived in England actually for a year and a half, enjoyed a phenomenal time in the early 80s, did some modeling in England, which was a phenomenal experience, and then moved back to New York, worked on 7th Avenue for large designers in a corporate world, and afterward moved to Los Angeles. And I've been in Angelina for 35 years. Starting in the corporate fashion world and moving into having my own company and having my own business for the last 25 years, having my own company, Single Dress, and now with StyleScan. So that's a quick recap of my life.
Well, people might be wondering why I've got a fashion designer on a marketing show, but your current role is actually the CMO at StyleScan. Tell us about StyleScan.
Well, StyleScan is an incredible visual tool that enables customers see someone that they can relate to, see the clothing in sizes that they can relate to. It is a visual digital tool. It's a plugin that is simple to use, simple to engage in, and pretty much my opinion is that every single website should have this tool implemented. It enables a consumer to preview a garment or an item of jewelry on a diverse carousel of models of diverse sizes, diverse ethnicities, and it's 100% zero. It's zero waste and pretty much incredibly inclusive. And I think it's just a fantastic, revolutionary tool. This is why I came on board and joined the team of StyleScan early on, because I saw this as an amazing solution to so many businesses, and just a cost saving of photo shoots, a cost saving of everything from creating additional samples to increasing sales and decreasing returns.
Yeah, I'm obviously not an expert in this area, but looking at your website, it just looks cool. But also, the challenges at the moment, isn't it? Is with e-commerce, is returns. So it reduces the returns, as you were saying, but also of waste, isn't it? The people buying fast fashion and they're not keeping the things.
Absolutely. So from the very, very get-go, and I will have some great analytics actually for you in terms of everything that we have gotten so far from all the behind the scenes on the the exact information of the ratio and returns and really increased engagement. But it's a tool that really is so simple to use. It's simple to implement. We're now in a full force of marketing it. So, of course, that's hence the conversation with you. And going back to how does a fashion designer become a marketeer? Or do you always have to be? You pretty much, all of us have to be marketeers. Every blogger is a marketeer. Every pretty much anyone and everyone who is involved in anything where there's sales involved or a presentation of product almost has to be a born marketeer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been preparing to chat to you because you're the first fashion designer I've had on the show, which might surprise you. But I've spoken to a lot of marketers that started in music or something creative, and I imagine there's parallels for you as well, because whether you're a musician, a writer, or a fashion designer, you have to be a marketer, don't you? You need to sell your designs and your products, right?
Absolutely. And, every trade show, even as a fashion designer, you obviously, you present your collection. So you have to learn how to, in a way, remove yourself from the product and move into sales and marketing. How do you present your product? How do you present it in the best light where the buyer, or at the same time now, how do we present StyleScan in the best light? How does the buyer understand this tool, and how do we create this incredible want and need for implementation of this product? Go take care of your dog now. Sorry, that wasn't meant to be.
That's fine. I've not had. I mean, I've never had a fashion designer as a guest, but I've not had a dog either. So it's a couple of firsts.
Yeah, so now you have a pug by the name of Truffle. Cool. you have Truffle on the show and a fashion designer. Yeah, I guess it happens. A lot of. His name is Truffle, and I guess he really wants to be on the show. He's a very fashionable guy.
so you kind of became, you need to become a marketer when you're a fashion designer. But how did you mentioned it a little bit about your history, but how did you become a fashion designer? I mean, it's too late for me now, but how do people become fashion designers?
Well, that was an incredible journey. As I mentioned, all my life I wanted to create. Leaving former Soviet Union, I left with a little suitcase full of dolls. It was actually like a breakfast metallic case full of treasured dolls that I made beautiful outfits for. So I started creating at a very, very early age. And as I mentioned to you, my grandmother, when she was still alive, she was incredibly talented and a very, very big influence in my life. My father was an artist. He was a creative designer engineer. So he taught me how to draw and paint. And my grandmother taught me how to sew and crochet at a very, very early age. Like I think I recall even when I was 5 years old, I would climb up on top of the table where she was sewing and turn her little ivory Singer sewing machine, and I was the handle turner while she was sewing. This wasn't even the sewing machine that had pedals. This was was actually a sewing machine that you turned the handle on and the needle would stitch. And I had this dream of, creating clothes, creating fashion, making, dressing women in something really beautiful. At an early age, I saw My Fair Lady, and from that moment on, all my dolls were dressed in beautiful gowns that Audrey Hepburn wore. So that started as a very, very fun journey. And at some point, very early on, my parents realized that I would not be able to be a fashion designer. Obviously, if we remained in the former Soviet Union. So the entire family, literally, which I'm forever grateful to them for, uprooted and left and immigrated. Really, I think they did it all for me, including both of my grandparents, my grandmothers that were still alive back then, and my grandfather and my parents. Because none of them spoke English. And I really think to this day, I call my mother every morning on FaceTime. She lives in New York still. And I thank her for, bringing me to America and enabling, giving me the chance to really succeed and follow my path and follow my dream. And obviously we moved to New York, we immigrated, and I followed my career in art, followed Fashion Institute of Technology, and studied and did some modeling to pay for my tuition in the interim, and ended up in design, and ended up working for incredible companies such as Marc Jacobs. I was one of the creative sweater designers that was behind Marc Jacobs' first collection, and I was fit modeling for Michael Kors. So that experience, again, everything leads to a point of marketing. Everything that I've journeyed through has led to where I am today and what I am able to bring to StyleScan, and actually what I saw as an incredible void for the fashion industry. And not so much a void, but an enormous need, because it's still pretty dinosauric. I mean, we're pretty much, the fashion industry still remains quite behind a lot of, obviously, tech firms, and even there are, of course, brands like Nike and, that are on the forefront of technology. But a lot of the fashion brands still lack the technological know-how, or even wanting to immerse themselves in the technology, the merger of technology and fashion, in order to bring the consumer a better experience for the consumer.
Right. And do you think that's because of the, there's the direct-to-consumer activity is kind of low, isn't it? And most fashion brands are selling through retailers and stuff. Is the innovation happening at the retail end and not with the designers? Is that what you're saying? Or is there just no innovation happening at all?
Well, there's incredible innovation happening I think much more innovation is happening on the retail end, obviously, because they're being pushed by Amazon. I mean, really, who gave everybody that jump start? Who gave everybody the nudge? Like, hey, fellow, you've got to move into the digital world, or everybody's going to shop on Amazon and you're going to be left behind. So, of course, very famous e-tailers such as Net-a-Porter, who are based out of UK, actually were at the forefront. A lot of the fast fashion e-tailers that became very notable for their fashion savvy, as well as presentation of product on the e-commerce site, such as My Teresa, which later got acquired by Neiman Marcus. I mean, some of these names might not mean much to you, but in the marketing world, in the marketing stratosphere of fashion, they're quite notable. And they were really the early on renegades. They were the disruptors. And so, there are very, very savvy savvy marketeers out there in the e-tail world, as well as on the high end, and as well as on obviously in the mass market. There's always been much more, because that is the consumer age group who gravitates to shopping online, because they don't like to go into a store. They are not craving the experience of the service or being serviced to as much as someone a little bit older in the older demographic. So it's almost like the industry itself was pushed to move on. Certain things happened,
And,
obviously
I
the
mean-
pandemic.
Yeah, I was
Sorry.
going to say, yeah. That's fine. I mean, I was just going to say that too. That the pandemic hastened that, didn't it, of the online shopping, and it's a hackneyed thing that everybody says, but it's true though, isn't it? It changed retail completely, didn't it?
Absolutely. It changed retail in every aspect, because
Yeah.
this could happen again. I think all the retailers realize this could happen again and again. Who knows? And the fact that the mom and pop stores couldn't even operate, and of course the larger stores, such as the Saxes and the Selfridges and the Harrods of today, were literally shut down because no one would go into the shops to try things on. So everybody's bedroom, their home mirror, their closet became their store. And people still shopped. Obviously, maybe they shopped for more casual wear, not so much the dress up, because there was no place to go. But people still had their COVID circles, their inner dinners, their at-home entertainment. People still were craving to look fashionable. Even if you were wearing something casual, you still, people were still craving to maintain that dignity or class, or, kind of a vision of something fashionable somewhat.
Yeah, well, at the beginning of the pandemic, in particular, I remember some colleagues on LinkedIn and stuff, and they were saying that they still were dressing for work in order to dress for the camera and the Zoom calls. So I think there were still people buying dress shirts and things like that to have their Zoom shirt ready.
We had a Zoom blouse. I had a collection of Zoom blouses. I literally called them that. I created an entire line sheet that was called Zoom blouses, with different beautiful floral prints and vintage prints and different colors. And that was my biggest seller during the entire time of, the tail end of 2020, when people kind of grappled with the insanity of it all, and realized that they would be moving on into 2021, and the continued work from home would still carry on, and people are still working. A lot of people are still working from home. It's difficult in the fashion industry to work from home, because you can't really cut and sew a garment from home. You can oversee certain things. Therefore, again, StyleScan comes into the digital creation. We as a StyleScan as a tool can be implemented on different, and I'll fill you in on all the different levels of speed to market, recognition, and again, really easing the transitional, easing the fact of sewing multiple samples, saving the earth of all the garbage that's out there from making samples. Zero waste, completely zero waste. In a short sentence, somebody literally, a sample maker in China or in India could make one sample, just one, photograph it on a mannequin, submit it to us. Let's say we are partnered with a brand, and we can put instantly that item on 14 different models in all 14 different sizes, and then send it back to the brand. The brand forwards it to the buyer, and the buyer is now able to visualize it and buy it. So it's a B2B, it's a tremendous B2B advantage, as well as then of course, the e-com stores use it as on a B2C, but there's just an incredible, this is why my job is to market it to the brands on the manufacturing end, as well as the e-tailers of today, because there are so many aspects and so many different facets to this visual tool that can be utilized and cross-utilized for marketing, for various marketing needs, that it's just a wonderful, wonderful tool.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I hadn't thought about the whole supply chain, and I'd only thinking about having seen the demo on your website and saw it as a consumer thing. I mean, I'm clearly not your target market, but even I, when I buy something online, so much stuff I buy, and it doesn't really work for me.
No,
I
and
need
you
to send
end
it
up
back, or I
returning.
don't bother wearing it.
Exactly. So whether a target market, we don't specifically have a target market. Everybody is our target, because people, and we're going into men's more and more, because we've been approached by a lot of menswear firms as well. Even if you're buying a classic polo shirt, let's say, for a meeting or for a Zoom call, you still could visualize what a particular color would look like on your skin tone prior to actually ordering it in seconds, and not have to deal with possible returns afterwards. You could also visualize it on someone who's similar to your size and see, I mean, we're not calling StyleScan a size predictor. We want to kind of stay away from that. We're more a visual tool, because when you claim yourself to be a size predictor, then, it goes into measurements and all these things. No, we are an incredible visual tool that will enable the consumer to visualize someone like them in the outfit that they're about to purchase, or in a shirt, or in a pair of shorts that they're about to purchase, but at least see what they would potentially look like, and see the color, how the color works with someone of your skin tone, and that's where we come in. We plug in diversity, we plug in engagement, and we plug in a size assortment, so that, and especially in the women's market too, because brands like Revolve and Retrofit and some of these, they're so indoctrinating into featuring product and only the skinny size 0, size 2 girls. And it is, it's incredibly kind of disheartening for any normal human being. An average size woman in America is size 16 nowadays. So if she's going to shop on a website and all she sees is that particular dress that is probably and usually is available in a size large or extra large, but it's never featured. It's only featured on a girl who is a size 2 or 0. It's very hard to visualize. We plug in the visualization experience. So now the consumer is engaged. They're experiencing something warm and snuggly, because shopping should be fun. You shouldn't be feared of shopping for something that you want. And she's experiencing something that's very relatable. She's looking at a person, and we also indicate the size, the height, and the size of the models, the assortment of models that we feature the product on. And she's looking and she's saying, there's somebody that I can relate to. Finally, this brand is offering this, and I would love to buy this dress. Now let me see what other colors this comes in. Oh, that doesn't look well on my skin tone, but the green does. I'll purchase that. And that's where it brings you to, obviously, to the purchase. The final thing that everybody obviously strives for is conversion. At the end, every e-tailer, every marketer's wish is for every e-tailer to realize their conversion rates. But the conversion rates will not happen unless the engagement is there.
Yeah. I like the story, because I like the blend of that. It gives a great experience, but also it provides efficiencies for the retailer. It's good for the planet and less waste and all that. It's a really good story. I actually sent the link to my daughter, and she was putting together outfits from your website.
Yeah,
so
isn't it fun?
Cool.
She can play, and it's a dream come true for people. Some of us who grew up watching Clueless and always dreamed about having that Cher's closet, where she would click on outfits. And I don't know if your daughter, how old is she?
She's 18.
Oh, wow. So she probably
Yeah.
at one point watched the movie Clueless because it's iconic,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
probably would love to do that and experience and have fun with implementing some of the StyleScan visual tools.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. And we're coming up to time. I'm surprised, and I'm also quite surprised because I actually have no idea about fashion, and it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much. I'm going to go with our final question. We have a regular feature, the Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool, where we throw all the bullshit, snake oil, and overhyped trends that plague this industry we love. What would you chuck in there?
Most of our competitors, of course. And I will not name names, but StyleScan is actually known for its dedication to product, its extreme, dedication to everything that is about technology. We have the technology to back up the story. We're not just a story that's glamorized everywhere and then there's nothing behind it. We actually have an incredible team of brilliant, an incredible tech team and an incredible creative team. So it's a wonderful combination of the two. So absolutely, I would say there are plenty of people out there that claim to be the next, clueless closet, but most of them do not provide the experience and the beautiful resolution that StyleScan provides. The tech maintains the integrity of the art and of the garment, which is really very rare. And also the visualization of the garment on the form or on the model, the way it's presented. We're also very big in jewelry, putting jewelry on diverse models, which is also great. But getting back to your swimming pool of snakes, definitely the competition fades when it comes to StyleScan.
I love it. Well, I think you've made a tremendous a switch from fashion design to B2B marketer, because I think any B2B marketer, especially in tech, will want to put their competitors, especially the ones that just talk marketing bullshit and don't have the features, the functions, and the good tech behind it. I think they would throw them in the swimming pool too. So I think that's a great testament to the fact you are now one of us. So there you go. And when people, we've talked about StyleScan, which is stylescan.com, right? But when people want to spin the dial on the interwebs, where are they going to find you?
So stylescan.com is our website, and they could easily sign up on on our website, which is stylescan.com. We are on Instagram, and for me personally, I'm on LinkedIn under at Galina Sobolev, Instagram at Galina Sobolev, and you can, anybody can DM us with any questions or anything interesting. The brands that are our brand partners are featured on stylescan.com. And most important is we are a Shopify affiliate. So anyone wanting to start their e-com store can benefit from requesting that StyleScan, that they would like a StyleScan feature to be implemented. So that's the great new thing that we're going to implement.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Any of us in e-commerce tech have heard of Shopify, so that's amazing. So that's cool. All right, Galina, that's been splendid, and thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely,
I will include
my pleasure.
all of your links in the show notes. So I'll include all your links in the show notes, and I look forward to staying in touch and seeing how you guys do.
Yes, follow me on Instagram for all the fashion shenanigans.
That's what I need, fashion shenanigans. I love it.
Absolutely,
Thank
and
you very
your
much,
daughter
Galina.
will probably enjoy it too. Pleasure meeting you, Ian. Take care.
Speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye. Thanks, Galina. That's the cool thing about doing a podcast. It's a great excuse to meet some fascinating people. Take a look at StyleScan. I will, of course, be including all of Galina's links in the show notes. Right, it's the end of the week. Time to wind down. And this week, the Rockstar CMO Virtual Bar is in Cleveland for Content Marketing World, where I find my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose, Chief Troublemaker at the Content Advisory. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. It has been an exciting, interesting, long, good week here in the lovely Cleveland. And Yeah, we're in the virtual bar here, and I think, I don't have the creative brain power to create something fancy, so I think we're just going to pour a couple of lagers and, maybe a Guinness. Let's have a Guinness, and we'll sit down and chitter chat about what we've seen over the last 4 days.
That's good. Well, yeah. So you're pouring yourself a Guinness, and I'm not, unfortunately, in the virtual or unvirtual bar of Cleveland this year, but I shall attempt to make that same drink in my desktop bar. So I shall quickly
you really
whip up.
don't have or is it sacrilege to have a Guinness in the bottle or can? I guess it comes in cans.
Yes,
that's sacrilegious. Yes.
Well, the truth of it is in my office over there, I'm pointing and looking.
Yes.
I do have a beer fridge where there is some beer, but on my desktop bar, and to preserve a joke that is I don't know, it's. Sorry, that was some Hendrick's gin I was putting in there. It's the most Scottish of.
Does it have the foam? Does it have the Guinness foam?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm going to put the foam in now because I'm going to use some cucumber tonic.
I see.
And that should foam up lovely. I'm going to let this settle, as all good things that come to you the wait, as they say, the Guinness people, and give this a sip. That's delicious, Robert.
It's definitely not as delicious as my Guinness. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. That is definitely not as good.
So we're calling this a Guinness.
Yes, we are. We are. The most Irish of gin and tonics, yes.
I could drink one of these every week.
I suspect
my
you
friend.
would, yeah.
So you're transporting the virtual bar to an actual bar, which is in Cleveland, I guess.
That's right. Yes,
episode.
we have spent the last 4 days here, and this is where we would spend our drink here in Cleveland. Beautiful, wonderful week we've had here.
Yeah.
If I had to pick out some thematic things, I think, there's some stuff that came up through the research that I just sensed from the crowd here. And what I mean by that is that, of course, CMI does their research every year to sort of see and take the temperature of where content marketing is as a practice. And the theme this year, our theme was driving forward, so driving forward in strategy and sort of getting beyond the last 2 years of difficulty and sort of, really sort of driving our strategy forward. And certainly that was there. But I think the theme that came through most was one that we also saw in the research, which is this: there seems to be this, we're doing everything okay, but we seem to have been lost a bit in the shuffle. And what I mean by that is that content marketers everywhere that I spoke with were sort of like, yeah, we're doing good work. We're doing the good things. We're, creating owned media. We're creating leads. We're creating subscribers. We're doing things well, but we seem to be a little bit forgotten in the business right now because everybody's sort of in this like very strange evolutionary place. Everything seems to be changing, whether it's, how we're working from home versus how we're working in the office versus how we're, doing direct marketing versus how we're actually trying to integrate, more content into our customer experience, how we're trying to solve for more reach and as we simultaneously try to, create deeper levels of engagement, and how we're actually dealing with measurement as we deal with the fact that our tools just aren't quite up to snuff yet, how we're dealing with Web 3.0 and we don't even know what we're doing there versus what's going on with, Web 2.0 that we still haven't figured out how to really do yet. There's sort of this push and pull of, are we doing the right things to really level us up as we start to think about content marketing? All while the complexity is this interesting sort of integration that we're seeing with, so content operations is definitely now a thing. It's having a moment, right? Content operations as full stop, as a marketing function, whether it be content marketing and thought leadership, or whether it be marketing content and advertising, or just management of digital assets. The idea of content operations was a big topic there. as these sort of push and pull was going on. Overall, I think everybody was really happy to be there and really happy to be in the space, feeling good.
Yeah.
I had so many people come up to me and go, "Man, this is just great to be in person again." But overall, I think there's a sense of unease. Let's put it that way.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, I think what's going to be interesting about some of these trends is how many of them stick, right? Because at the moment, I wonder about some of these things being a bit of a distraction, because we see, a lot of the Web3 stuff, a lot of the sort of leading content marketing, content creator type folks looking a lot at Web3, and you wonder, whether that's going to be sustainable in a way.
I think that's right.
That?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think it goes beyond even the Web3 stuff. I think it gets into, things like artificial intelligence, which was a big topic, the idea of content creation, the idea of piercing through the noise now that, it's even worse than it used to be in terms of trying to, get attention, because so much of the customer relationship has now shifted to digital. And that includes, by the way, internal communications, right, with our remote workers and, working with virtual teams and, our agencies that we now no longer have on site, but that we're working with across Zoom, and our writers, our content creators, which in some cases has been really good. But in many cases, there's a new way of working that is really providing for a big, steep learning curve. And that learning curve is really something that, I think is causing people to be challenged, right? To be challenged with what should, to your point, what should we be focused on, and what are we being distracted by?
Yeah. And so you touched a little bit there. Is there a lot of talk about the practice of content operations, or is it a lot of conversation still about tech and what tech? We've gone for a phase, haven't we? We've been tech led in marketing. Did you get a sense of that?
There absolutely is a sense of that, and it's still there for sure. But it's I think what has happened now is that there is a realization, at least there seems to be a realization among the folks here, that tech is not the magic cure-all, right? That you have to have and I think this is really at the core of why content operations is finally having a moment, which is what the new working world has really demonstrated is the need for collaboration, and how much collaboration is really needed. And what I think it's exposed in much of the technology is how lacking these technologies really are in collaborative sorts of features, right? Most technology is really good at the single user doing a single job, getting that job task done, right? Mostly it's built that way, because the collaboration either happens outside of that tech, or it happens, historically, in a room or in a bunch of cubes, or, in a workspace where people can physically, go back and forth and talk and chat with one another and look at things on a different screen and share the screen in a conference room and do all those kinds of things. And I think a lot of the tech now, the focus anyway I see, is how do we actually collaborate with in-person teams and remote teams simultaneously? And that collaboration is a big piece of what content operations really is. So it's putting in those processes, planning, putting in a planning process, putting in the workflow processes that actually makes content work at scale, and all these digital experiences that we now have to create. And so I think that's where a lot of the attention was when it comes to tech, was like collaboration and team and remote work and, being able to do things from a million miles away and through easy interfaces and all those kinds of things, rather than sort of the sophistication of X or Y or Z.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it helps, isn't it? I mean, we're all going through that right now. I see that in my own work is when you're trying to define process and try and get that stuff into the tools, where you would get a bunch of people together with a whiteboard, there's that that sort of experience is still lacking.
It's tough. Yeah, it's really, really tough. I mean, we're struggling with it with our clients, right? Which is, you know, I mean, you know, the virtual whiteboards are fine, right? You know, and when I say fine, I mean they're fine, but nobody loves it. Nobody loves that experience, you know, and you know, I mean, I'm not sure that we loved the conference room, you know, staring out of the parking lot in a beige room with a whiteboard either, but it was better, right? I mean, it's just demonstrably better to be physically in a room with people. And the interesting thing I find is that it's actually the reverse now is starting to come to fruition a lot. What I mean by that is I'm remote and we're facilitating or working in a room where 4 or 5 or 6 of them are in a conference room together, right? They're on video together in a conference room. And so that's the worst, right? The best is to be all in person together. The second best is when you're all remote in different locations. And then the worst is actually when some of them are together and you're actually the one remote, because it's just never a good experience for you.
No, especially if you're trying to whiteboard something.
Yeah, that's right. A brainstorm or create any sort of creative energy in a room. It's just really difficult to do.
Yeah. Anyway, back to CM World. Dare I ask how your keynote went?
My keynote went just fine. I never know how these things go, and I never try and judge it, and all those kinds of things. So I think let's just say it went just fine. My topic that I was talking about was really the themes that we're seeing here. That we talked a little bit about this the last couple of weeks. This idea of creating more, and how do we actually start to think through what strategy really means when it comes to content. Really sorting out the fact that, I think it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked about the idea when I talk to CMOs or CFOs and they say, well, what do you mean by content? And, and I end up saying, just let that hang there, right? Because it's everything, right? And so when you start talking about content strategy and you go, yes, it is. It's really that important. It's really that big. It's really that unwieldy. We have to get our arms around it. That was sort of the topic of my keynote, was sort of looking at things in a different perspective from that idea. And I think it went good.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Well, I'm sure it did. I've seen you speak a few times, and always excellent. And it's always nice to have you here on the show. The other thing that I just caught from that, and maybe it was quite selfish, was that over a few drinks in the virtual bar, you were able to form your views for your keynote. So I feel like I contributed.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. It's almost as if we plan these things, right? It's almost it's this strange sort of feeling as if they're like almost thought through before we actually meet in the bar. I can't imagine what that's all about.
Well, I mean, it'll come as no surprise to the listeners that there is some thinking through it. It doesn't happen here with me. It happens mostly with you. So yes, I just listen to your thoughts. So it's been excellent. And congratulations on a great show.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, and it's as always, it's so fantastic to see old friends and to make some new ones. And, it really, this year felt a lot like homecoming because there's so many people that I hadn't seen in 2 years because they didn't travel or I didn't travel or, all of that. So there was so many hugs. And it felt really like a back to normal event where people felt comfortable, and it was, that's a really great thing.
Splendid. And also, you mentioned at the beginning the research that the Content Marketing Institute does, I think has always been excellent. And I'd encourage people to go check that stuff out.
Yes, we actually debut it. We debut some of the numbers at the show, and then so in the coming weeks, the actual report will come out.
Oh, splendid. All right. Well, I'll include a link to the Content Marketing Institute in the show notes where people might find that kind of research. But also, if people were interested in where all these thoughts for these keynotes come from, where might they find that inspiration?
Well, they'll find me at contentadvisory.net.
Splendid. And when they spin the dial on the interwebs, when you get back from Ohio, where are they going to find you?
Well, assuming I get back from Ohio, I mean, the travel, let's just put it this way. Business travel is still pretty broken as it works out. I will be on LinkedIn as the best place to catch me. I mean, I'm on Twitter too. I'd love to connect with everybody on Twitter, but LinkedIn is where I do most of my writing and sort of communicating and kvetching.
Kvetching.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lovely word. Kvetching. I'm going to have to add that to my vocabulary. I'm not sure I can quite pull it off, but I'm going to give it a go. And most importantly for me, are you going to be in our virtual bar next week?
I will indeed. Back in the virtual bar, as it were.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much, Robert. And again, congrats on a great show. And I look forward to speaking to you next week.
Cheers.
Thank you, Robert. I plan to have that conversation in person at CM World next year for sure. So, that's a wrap on episode 132 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. I've been your host, Ian Truscott. Thanks again to Jeff, Galina and Robert for sharing their insight. Please say hello to them. I'll include all their links in the show notes, which you can find on your favourite podcast app or at rockstarcmo.com, where you can also find all our previous episodes. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. So, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? Please let us know on the socials or drop a rating or review in your favourite podcast app. Or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff will be in the studio. I go backstage with my chum Liz High, who's written a fabulous book about branding and banks. And Robert will be back from Cleveland and in the bar. Until then, have a great week. I hope you can join us next week here on Rockstar CMO FM.
This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.